Hello, everyone. My name is Lucas Schaefer. I'm the MENding Program Coordinator at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. In the webinar today, hosted by the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, I'm going to be telling you all about the MENding Program. I'm super excited to get into the nitty-gritties and explain to you why this program is so awesome and why I'm so excited to be a coordinator for it, and share what's going on and what's going to be in the future of MENding. So um, to keep me on topic and keep me on track, I have a slideshow that I'm going to go through just with some points. Yeah, awesome. So what are we going to be talking about when we're talking about MENding? First, we're going to start with a kind of timeline when MENding was made, what its initial kind of principles and intentions were in its making, and where it is now, and what led it to there. Then we're going to be sharing the 3 MENding pillars, so the kind of different branches of MENding. Some of them are more concrete and being used currently, while others are still in development. More on that later. And then we're going to be talking about what we can learn in the MENding program. What is the content of MENding, right? And what kind of conversations are going to be had throughout this program. Then we're going to talk about where can I use what I've learned, right? So we're going to answer the question what do I do with this knowledge? And more closely linked to that question is, who is this MENding program for, right? Is it just for the participants in the program? Is it for me? Is it for KSAC? We'll answer that question. And then we'll wrap it up by asking the question, what's the future of MENding? What's the kind of forward direction that MENding's going into? And how has that been informed? Awesome. So MENding is a pretty new program at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. Beginning in 2017, the MENding program started off as a train the trainer program where participants are taught the program's material and then invited to teach the content of that program through volunteer opportunities and eventually facilitating the program itself, right? So this was developed and created with Ian DeGeer, Lisa Clark, and Teddy Lorenz. And they were the kind of first initial brains of the operation, writing the curriculum, using their collective experiences in teaching men about gender-based violence to kind of inform how many sessions, what the content is going to be. And this program was inspired by other kind of preventative leadership initiatives like the MOST Club or the Men of Strength Club, the White Ribbon Campaign, the White Ribbon Program, and OHL Onside. So where this kind of started to develop is the year afterwards, right? 2018. 2 of the MENding cohorts were kind of rolled out, right? And that was at Trent and Fleming. Those were kind of our main places where we're going to be delivering this content. And something that was also adapted and changed in the MENding program was that it was adapted for grades 7 to 8 classrooms. So while this was originally supposed to be for adult men, right, people who are going to be leaders and able to facilitate this content in kind of a more emerging adult or adult capacity, we in 2018 adapted this content to be delivered to secondary schools. Then in 2019, our prevention education coordinator, Alicia Fisher, expanded the program by building up more facilitators. So doing more cohorts at Trent University and Fleming College. And then, this is a big development in the MENding program, creating opportunities for those facilitators to teach its content to a variety of elementary and secondary school students. So building off the 2018 development of tweaking the content to be delivered to secondary classes, Alicia Fisher adapted it by also allowing it to be delivered to elementary school classes. So people who have gone through the MENding program and are now MENding facilitators are able to take their knowledge and go into classrooms, right? Now they're talking about the MENding content in their community, which is great, right? And this is just an awesome addition. This is also where I got picked up in the mix, and I'm happy to be the MENding Program coordinator today. And now, in 2020, the MENding Program is continuing to be facilitated through online cohorts, and we even have different kind of developing things that we'll talk to in a little bit. Another note that I want to mention here is the addition of the MENding logo, right? Originally, we have the original kind of MENding, engaging men to end gender violence. And then with this current MENding program, we've gone towards a kind of leadership initiative. And that's essentially like what this training is, right? We're learning how to be great male leaders, but more on that later. So I hope this was able to give you a kind of historical context of where MENding came from and where we are today. So how I want to talk about the MENding program is in 3 branches, right? We have the MENding Ourselves kind of section where the MENding facilitators are presenting the content of the MENding program, right? And we'll go more into that content in the next slide. But for now, I want you to think of going out and doing volunteer opportunities at secondary and elementary schools as falling underneath the MENding Ourselves window. Webinars like these would fall underneath the MENding Ourselves window, right? This is where the MENding facilitators are presenting the content, but not necessarily training new facilitators. This, training new facilitators, would fall underneath the MENding the community. So this is often referred to as the MENding training, but it is a train the trainer program where MENding facilitators and previous MENding facilitators are able to take guys through this program and lift them up and provide them the opportunity to teach this content like I'm doing today. Then a kind of emerging and still in the groundworks developing program is MENding After Harm. So an important conversation to have when we're talking about gender-based violence is from the perspective and understanding that there's a continuum of gender-based and sexual violence, right? And along this continuum are men and people who have unknowingly and unwittingly committed these harms, right? Or maybe they were conscious of these harms and are now recognizing the impact that they've had on themselves and also the people that they've harmed, right? So what the idea behind this program is to give people who have done these harms of varying degrees an opportunity to reconcile with themselves what they've done, right? And then provide themselves on a self-directed basis development opportunities so that they can stop this from happening again, right? How can we learn from the wrongdoing and harm that we've done and commit to better future action? So that's the kind of philosophy behind MENding After Harm. So with these 3 pillars, we have a pretty good understanding of like what the MENding program does, right? We deliver the content, we train facilitators, and we help in the self-development of people who have committed gender-based violence at some point in their life. Right. So now we're going to be talking about the actual content of the MENding program. If I was giving you an elevator pitch, which I luckily am not, I get to go on a lot about it and really gush about this awesome program. I would say that the MENding program is a leadership initiative for male-identified people who are interested in educating other men about sexual and gender-based violence. So like, if you wanted a 1-sentence definition of what the MENding program is, that's it. So what we're talking about specifically with this slide is the MENding the community portion of MENding, right? This is the facilitator training program. And in that facilitator training program are 4 3-hour sessions over the course of a couple weeks, right? And the content that we're going to be talking about is defining and learning about terms surrounding and describing sexual and gender-based violence. We also reflect on different historical instances of gender-based violence, both in North America and more specifically Canada. We talk about masculinity and what it means to be a man, and how different kind of dominant narratives about masculinity intersect with gender-based violence and inform gender-based violence, and are in fact kind of underneath the umbrella of gender-based violence. And we discuss this more in depth and kind of just what's the word? Sometimes the topic of masculinity can become tough to talk about just because of how many disinformation campaigns and anti-feminist rhetoric has been used. But we talk about that very deeply in the program and kind of clarify what we're actually trying to do. What we as awesome feminist organizations like KSAC are trying to do to end gender-based violence. Another point that we talk about in the program is consent and healthy relationships. We talk about in detail what is consent, right? And more concretely, how we have healthy relationships with other people, not only in a sexual nature or having intimate relationships with other folks, but having close friendships and being close with your family, right? What does it mean to have a good relationship with your friends, right? How can we use consent to have that healthy relationship? So we talk about this by doing different activities and also watching different videos. Then at the we talk about bystander intervention. So this is the opportunity that we talk with the facilitators after they've learned about what gender-based violence is, what is consent, and what's men's role in ending gender-based violence, to apply their knowledge, right? How can we, after we know how to recognize instances of gender-based violence and sexual violence, intervene when we see it in our everyday lives, right? So we go over different strategies and go through different scenarios together about how to apply those strategies and how we can be leaders everywhere we go and really apply this content. Then at the end of the program, we talk about how to facilitate the program well, how to be a good teacher and a good facilitator. So this is obviously very hard to do without providing practice opportunities, right? So that's why in this session, we give participants an opportunity to try to deliver the content to the rest of the participants, right? Trying their best to take the discussion activities and facilitate them themselves. But this is obviously going to be something that is an ongoing process, right? Even as we speak on learning how to be a good facilitator, right? So this is wonderfully paired with what happens after the MENding program. After you've gone through this facilitation program, what will happen after? And turns out, after you do the MENding facilitation training, you're a MENding facilitator. And that means you're ready to take your learning and put it into practice, either by going out in the community and delivering the MENding content, or applying it in your everyday life, right? So you can either volunteer at the center, and we have different volunteer opportunities that are still emerging. If you want to learn about that, there is a tab on the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center website about volunteering, how to get involved. You can contact the different contact there, or you can email me at lschaefer, that's LSCHAEFER at kawarthasac.ca. And you can learn how to get involved from there. You can apply this MENding content to your personal life, right? Like, this is not something that you will not use. When you learn about what gender-based violence is and what it means to be a man, especially when you're a male-identified person, that is something that you are going to be thinking about for arguably the rest of your life, right? This is a really transformative program. You're going to be thinking about what you've talked about in this program long after you've done it, right? So the application of the content to your personal life is bound to happen and encouraged in the program. We ask a lot of different reflection questions, how we can apply what we've learned to our everyday life and then bring it back to the cohort and talk about it. And you can also apply it to school, work, and even in your community as a whole. And how you can do that is through bystander intervention, right? When you start witnessing and knowing what gender-based violence looks like, you're given the opportunity and the responsibility to intervene, right? How can we do that well? How can we do that while we are keeping ourselves safe and ensuring that we are not contributing to the harm going on and being confrontive or assuming, right? How can we bypass those barriers? So you can apply the mending content in so many different ways. This is genuinely useful information to know, and we want as many people as possible to know about this stuff. So you're going to be talking about it with your friends, you're going to be talking with your family, and talking about it with different spheres of influence you have. If you're an educator, you're going to be talking about it in your classes. Awesome. So going over a very common question that we get in the MENding program. Who is MENding for, and why men? So whenever I talk about the MENding program to people who haven't heard about it before, they often are confused. They're like, oh, are people like court ordered to take your program, right? Or do they have to be kind of like referred to this program? Or often another misunderstanding is like that like the men that we have in these cohorts are men that have perpetrated gender-based or sexual violence. So this is not the case. The MENding program is for guys who voluntarily want to learn about what it means to be a good male leader, right? And yeah. So who is the MENding program for? Other than like the participants who are just male identified people who want to learn how to be a good male leader, the impact of the MENding program is intended to benefit everyone, right? By eliminating and preventing gender-based violence, this will be at the benefit of all people, right? But the training, of course, is geared towards more male-identified people, right? Like, and this isn't to say that female-identified people or non-binary or trans folk wouldn't benefit from hearing this content, but it's a male leadership program. So like we're trying to build up male leaders. That's the whole shtick. So I'm going to be talking about statistics and kind of different reasons and rationales that we have for delivering the program. So the majority of perpetrators of sexual and gender-based violence are male. This is a empirical fact, has been studied and retested, and that statistic is alarmingly high at 97% of perpetrators of sexual violence are male. That's a lot, right? But when we listen to that statistic, we also have to take into account that not all men have done these kinds of harms, right? So these are the harms of kind of repeated offenses, right? So with those kind of two knowledge bits, many men are left without the knowledge to recognize this violence as it's happening and how to intervene, right? The reason why, what we can do as men who have not committed gender-based or sexual violence and want to do what we're able to do to intervene and stop it and talk about why we shouldn't be happening this and really prevent it at its roots, right? By being close with the men who might do this harm, is by knowing what gender-based violence is, knowing how to recognize it, and then arming yourself, literally, with like knowledge to intervene and prevent that from happening, right? By providing men with this knowledge, all men with this knowledge, they'll be equipped to be excellent male leaders and role models and become agents of change. This is going to happen when we build up a culture where men are not encouraged to do this kind of gender-based or sexual violence, where there are social deterrents that prevent this from being something that's celebrated or dismissed, right? And that's going to change with the men who want to see this change happen. So by learning how to be leaders and advocates for the prevention and ending of gender-based violence, this is why this MENding program is directed towards men, right? Because men, and this has been proven empirically as well as anecdotally, listen to other men. Men listen to other men about issues like these, right? When we learn about gender-based violence and men kind of like start to learn about feminist theory and learn that they are implicated in the same systems of oppression that all people are, right? That patriarchy, a dominant complex of a power structure that like lifts up men to the detriment of people who aren't men also hurts guys as well, right? Patriarchy affects all of us. So once we raise up and train male facilitators to kind of learn about this, right, and be able to communicate these truths about the world, we can become agents of change for lessening this harm and creating a new direction. Oh, so who is MENding for? Everyone. Everyone serves to benefit from the MENding program. But it is intended to uplift men who want to see this change. Awesome. So we were able to talk about where MENding is right now and the different kind of philosophies, principles, and groundworks that inform and have like shaped what MENding is. But what's the future direction of MENding? What's in the groundworks? What's being made for the future? So the MENding program is pretty dynamic, right? It's under constant revision, trying to update and, accommodate for new knowledge. Is like an ongoing process that is always happening. So in that way, maintenance is a future as well. But what's being developed right now? So this MENding After Harm program that I referenced a little bit earlier is still in its theoretical development, right? I'm doing a lot of consulting with different philosophers like ethicists, social psychologists, developers, and different community resources like the John Howard Society with their Partner Assault Response Program, and One City Peterborough. It's just been this awesome experience of collecting data and collecting what best practice is and imagining what this program can be and how we can make it beneficial and addressing kind of different gaps that we see in this effort to end gender-based violence, right? How are we going to allow for those who have committed this kinds of harm to learn, heal, and commit to better future action, right? How can we hold them in community and allow them to continue their development? That's what this program's all about. And I'm so excited to be doing it. There's going to be updates on the MENding tab at the Kawartha sexualassaultcenter.com. So if you're interested, that's where updates will go. We also have a self-directed online training, right? So the MENding training, Train the Trainer facilitation program, the MENding the Community branch of MENding, is something that is done either in person or in COVID-19 times over Zoom. So this is a live training that happens where people are able to talk and hear each other. But if this doesn't fit your schedule or if you miss a session, we have a self-directed online training where you can take the content of the MENding training and really do the internal reflective work still, right? But you could do this at your own pace. So it's a kind of pre-recorded session that you can tune in, look at, and reflect on with a MENding document. And you do the homework there as well. And so that's in development and should be available soon. We're just kind of finishing it up and putting the last finishing touches on it. And in terms of what's next, who knows, right? Like with the many different ways that gender-based violence can be assessed and ended, the MENding program is only going to be able to develop further. So if you have an idea or if you want to get in touch with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, please do. If you have an idea that you think is going to be worth putting into the world to address this issue that affects so many lives and so many people, you could be part of MENding's future. Yeah. All right, we talked about a lot. So let's go over what we learned. So the elevator pitch. MENding is a male ally leadership program for male identified people. It's a leadership program. That's the one sentence, one line pitch. And that the MENding program is 4 3-hour sessions covering sexual and gender-based violence, what it means to be a man and what is masculinity, what is consent and how do we have healthy relationships, and how do we become active interveners into the instances of gender-based violence that we see in our everyday lives? How can we be great leaders? And we also learn that men need to get involved, and getting into the MENding program is how, right? With that statistic of 90% of men, or excuse me, 90% of perpetrators being male, right? It's going to have to take the men who are potentially going to be doing this violence, or the men who are surrounding the people that do this violence, to do the work necessary, right? This is oftentimes in this program, we watch an awesome video by a anti-oppression and anti-racist educator named Jackson Katz, and he argues that gender-based violence and sexual violence has been made a women's issue when it is actually a men's issue. This is something that men need to engage in and become a part of. Like, this is not something that is affecting people that aren't men, right? Men are also the victims and survivors of gender-based and sexual violence, right? And the perpetrators are often men as well. We need to get men involved. We need everyone that we can to engage in ending gender-based violence. So this is how you can do it, by getting involved in the program. MENding is a transformative and personal program. The reason why we have the MENding program spaced out the way we do is because it takes a lot of time to deeply reflect and take this content to heart. You're going to be, as you're going through this program, relating it to your past experiences, your current experiences, and almost like seeing the world differently, right? Once you start being able to recognize the harms and wrongdoings that is done to all people, you start to realize, like, you have a responsibility to act, right? When you're given this knowledge, you have to use it. And that's deep, right? Once you learn this knowledge, there's no going back, in a sense. You have to lead forward with it. And that requires a lot of internal reflection and a lot of time. Yeah. So another point that I want you to take home is that we are leaders, right? And with this program, we can become great male leaders. We can learn about what being a leader should be and what it is, and how learning about gender-based violence and learning about consent and learning how to use this knowledge and actively intervene allows us and enables us to be excellent male leaders. Awesome. And that brings us to the end of this webinar, where we talked about what the MENding program is. If you're an educator watching this or delivering the content to a classroom to kind of get them engaged and to get them learning about it and interested, you can fill out a survey that is attached to this webinar. Awesome. So please fill out that survey. I want to make sure that this webinar is as great as possible, and that only happens with your feedback. So that would be very greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. And with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you so much for tuning in if you were able to. And if you're watching this as a pre-recording, thanks so much. Take care.